My name is Mia, and before I talk to you about what I spend most of my life doing, I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. I started in the film industry when I was 19. I didn't go to film school. I learned everything on the job, made most of it up as I went along. And so most of my career I have spent in marketing and distribution and selling finished movies. So I didn't actually get into production and get into what you're all doing now until 10 years ago. I spent most of my time working on other people's films, some great movies, people like Ang Lee, Todd Haynes, Shekhar Kapoor, John Sayles, some great American and European directors, Michael Winterbottom, and spent my early career selling their films or internationally or releasing them in cinemas in the UK. And then there was a point at which I really got frustrated with how disconnected I saw films being from the audience. And I felt that I really wanted to get nearer the creative process, and I became much more interested in production. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years. And the first film that I produced won an Oscar, which is a mad thing to happen to your first movie. And that was a film called Six Shooter, like the gun, by Martin McDonagh, who has gone on to make several feature films called In Bruges and Seven Psychopaths. And I've subsequently produced several of my own features and documentaries. But most of what I spend my time doing is running this scheme. I'm the creative producer of a feature film scheme in London called Microwave. And so I'm going to give you a bit of context as to what the scheme is and how it works and why we do what we do. And I'd like to keep this open. So if you at any point have questions, Gosha is going to ask me some questions. And also, please, you guys ask questions as well. Do you want to explain the rules of that?
I jeszcze taka uwaga, oczywiście możecie zadawać pytania w języku polskim. Mia będzie miała symultaniczne tłumaczenie. I said that they can also ask in Polish, so we keep it very open and interactive.
Yeah, because I'm obviously fluent.
And from my side, I met Mia last year actually at a producer's workshop. I was really impressed by the Microbudget feature scheme, and so I'm very, very happy that you are here and we made a good presentation.
Great, thank you. Okay, so what is Microwave? So this is the name of the scheme. It was established in 2006 in the UK to basically enable the best new talent to make their debut feature films. The reason behind this was that at the time, and which still kind of exists to an extent, in the UK there was quite a lot of state or government funding from people like BBC, the UK Film Council, which are now the BFI, Channel 4, and a number of other regional funds helping talent make short films. So lots and lots, and of course at film school that's where what you get to do too. So you get to make lots of short films, and then people were finding it impossible to get their first features made. There was a very big leap between the short film and the feature film, and often years and years and years of talent trying to make their films. And often the first short film I made the budget was £100,000 for a 25-minute short. Now, it's very hard commercially to sell shorts, so usually the money only comes from the government or from people who don't necessarily need to recover that money. So it makes it it's not a business model, it's soft money, usually that's what it's called, that goes to make these kind of movies. So this scheme was a number of people getting together, looking at this and looking at the American model of independent cinema and what was happening in places like Sundance, that there were a lot of films being made for much, much smaller budgets than we were making films for, but with an equivalent or better outcome commercially. So we thought, well, if we can challenge filmmakers to make films for the same, a feature film for what they're making short films for, let's see if this experiment can work. And then we can be much more cost effective, and we can find the talent of the future that get to practice properly, because most of people who start out in films don't want to. They're using short films as a leapfrog, as a stepping stone to features. So we see the scheme as an apprenticeship scheme. It's not film school, it's a professional scheme. And what we do is we bring people through that are supported by lots of very well-known mentors, which I'll come to later. So we ask the whole film industry to support our talent. And because we're a scheme with BBC and government funding, we can do that. We can bring a lot of established names to help us do this. And this is very important, the older generation support the younger generation, which I see happening here. So we call it, as I said here, a training through production scheme. So we see it that although you're making your first professional feature film, you're still, and you have a real outcome, you have a film that hopefully will sell, that will be released in cinemas, definitely in the UK, and hopefully in some territories around the world. But it's still that you're still very much training. It's not embarrassing to say that you don't know what you're doing, and we encourage it, because then you can get problems fixed. What is very, very common, we saw through experience, my experience particularly, having worked with a lot of new talent, they felt that they had to pretend that they knew everything. Especially the pressure on the director is very high, that the director has to pretend to be very confident, because that's what people expect. And if you've never made a feature film, you don't know, you haven't told a story over a long period and it's a very different medium. So we positively encourage people to tell us where they feel unconfident, in order that we can support them more.
You mentioned that it's dedicated to UK talent. Is it because of the public bodies that are involved in the funding that you basically dedicated to on the UK market? Is it possible for other nationalities to be in a competition, I'd say, yes, for this apprenticeship?
Not at the moment, unless they're London-based. If they're UK taxpayers, that's fine. So at the moment, in the current incarnation of the scheme, no, unless they're based and live in the UK. But we're very interested. The reason I come to places like this and I accept invitations like this is that we're very interested in setting up partnerships for international co-production collaborations. So either where we can give the information on what we do to other people like state funders here or producers here who are interested in doing something similar to inspire them, or otherwise to collaborate. What we would like to do next is have a co-production partnership between other countries in the UK in order that you're getting talent to then collaborate. So no is the immediate answer, but we're trying to fix that. So it's, as I said, a partnership between Film London, and so that's who hire me. So I'm an independent producer. I'm not an executive. I'm a creative producer for the scheme. So I don't work for Film London. I work for the scheme. I think that's very important in order that there is a kind of arm's length, collaborative, supportive atmosphere for the talent, and that they don't feel like there's a big band of executives like the studio telling them what to do. So there's a much more collaborative atmosphere. Is everything okay with translation? Yep. So we collaborate with, we don't put up all of the budget, but we put up the majority of the budget of the films. And every budget is £120,000 or less. So that's approximately 160,000 euros. And that's to produce a feature film. that needs to be finished to a ProRes file or to a broadcastable quality delivery. And on top of that, there's a lot of training money. So the collaborators and the mentors that I talked about, we pay for them. So we estimated the value of each film is actually really more like £300,000, but the actual production budget is $120,000. And so we put up some of that money, most of that money, but what we also encourage is that the producers have to be entrepreneurs. It doesn't breed, it's not healthy to just, as a state body, give money, the 100% of the budget to the producers and the filmmakers, because it doesn't teach them anything, because the next time they have to make a movie, they haven't got the skills of raising money. So we put up the majority, but not all of it, in order that they have to learn to go out and raise money and learn how to pitch, learn how to take these meetings, learn how to negotiate, because that's what they're going to need to do if they have long careers. And the point of the scheme is that we pick people who don't just want to make one movie, but have a career ahead of them.
You also mentioned fully delivered within that production budget. What does it mean? Is it also includes the distribution and festival distribution? I mean, do you include within the budget the promotion at the festivals?
No. I mean, as a rule of thumb, in a production budget, there are never those costs, because they're what other sales agents and distributors, that's their risk. They put that money up. So production budget is that it's technical. It's entirely that you can sell the film to a sales agent or a distributor and technically deliver it to a professional quality. For extra costs, they will pay. So if you want a 5.1 mix and, you know, kind of higher like M&Es and translation and different kinds of aspects of delivery in order that you can sell the film worldwide, it's up to our partners who we find to pay for that. So it's just to deliver a kind of professional, the basic professional quality technically. So the principles, as I said, are challenging filmmakers to deliver a feature film on £120,000. At the time that we started in 2006, when the scheme first began, no one thought it was possible to make good movies on this budget. Certainly not in the UK, not in the professional, in places like the UK Film Council, and BBC even weren't completely 100% convinced at the time that the films would be any good. They wanted to partner in this, but they weren't sure that the films would be as commercially viable as they turned out. When we first started, as I said, people came to see our movies and they thought that they were going to be terrible. And when actually they realised that they were really good, it suddenly kick-started a movement where there are many more micro-budget films made in the UK, and this has become a really viable option for first-time feature film directors and producers and writers to get their start. It used to be, when we started, that an average budget for a first-time film was £1 million. That's a very high risk. It's very difficult for the talent, because it means that your film has to be commercially viable or win big prizes, in which case you're artistically viable and your next film might be commercially viable. If you're making films for £120,000, you have much more freedom and there is less money to recover. So it means that it's much more economically viable on both sides, for the financiers, but also for the talent. The other important thing is that the filmmakers own a piece of the film, a significant piece of the film, forever. That's also very unusual in most of the financing models. You get paid, you as a technician or as a filmmaker, you get paid a fee from your budget, and that's it. You usually never make more money unless somehow you own a piece of it. And that's relatively rare. Because people don't get paid very big fees from our production budgets, it's very important to us that they own a real stake in the movie and it's significant. And a number of the films have already paid out quite significant fund fees to the filmmakers.
So what you're saying is that everyone gets paid?
Yes. We'll come to the economic model and how it breaks down, so I'll talk through that more. But yes, that's absolutely vital. Everyone gets paid. No one can work for free. It's okay to get people to work for free if you're a student production or you're doing something with your friends. At a professional level, it's very difficult to justify it, and it's also not fair. Why? Especially if you've got the BBC and Film London involved, you can't ask people to work for nothing. So people are basically paid a minimum salary of which is £65 per day, which is the minimum wage. It's the state minimum wage in the UK is £65 a day or less, or more. You can't legally be paid less than that. So that's what we use. So that's the fee that everybody gets paid, from the cinematographer, production designer, through to the runner. Everyone is on the same fee. And it's very interesting. It creates a very egalitarian, is the word. I hope that's easy to translate. Equal set. So there is much less hierarchy than there are on bigger film sets, because everyone knows what they're being paid, and it's not very much. And they know that everybody there is not there for the money, but they're there for other reasons, and many of them creative or artistic. And there's benefits to this, because you can't live on that kind of money, but the shoots are very short. They're 17 or 18 days. They're usually mainly in London, so people can go home at night, and there's lots of benefits to them. So although the fee's not big, they're doing it for other reasons. It's very important to make the films audience focused and to do as much work with the filmmakers about what that means. And that we do a lot of work with ensuring we see films together. We look at marketing campaigns, we look at what kind of movies are being made or not being made, and we do a lot of work with our talent around that so that their films are not made in isolation. Many of the projects that we make tend to be quite personal, and that can be powerful because they can come from a very real place, but also it can be dangerous in that they can be indulgent and actually not easy to find an audience because they're very often small stories. So we try and find the balance, not making people make commercial films as such, but films that have some kind of ambition to be really seen, not necessarily in cinemas, but on VOD, DVD, TV, other platforms, but that they reach an audience and know about what that means. As I said before, we get a lot of very well-known directors, like we've had people like Stephen Frears, Michael Winterbottom, Andrea Arnold, all quite big names in the UK, mentor our directors and writers and producers. We concentrate mainly on writers, directors and producers as the core team, and we make sure that whenever there is workshops on finance, that the directors are also there, and also when there are workshops on creative issues and writing, the producers are there, because we need many more creative producers than exist. Creative producers are very important, and there aren't enough good ones. And equally, you need directors who understand to a degree. You don't need to understand how to do deals, but you need to understand the economics to a degree, at least to know what your producer is dealing with. It's mainly about empathy. That's mainly the reason. Not so you can do it yourself, but that you understand and can be helpful. And when your producer is saying, we can't do this for financial reasons, you understand why.
Is the director a scriptwriter at the same time?
Sometimes, most of them, yes. But again, we encourage as many separate writer, director, producer teams as possible. I mean, it really depends on the best projects. We back the best projects. But we do the UK has a very strong tradition of screenwriters, and not so many new ones coming through because they don't get to practice so much because there's so much more focus on writer-directors in one person. So as much as possible, we try and encourage writer collaborations as well. So the point is to launch careers across the value chain. So it's also giving opportunities to editors, costume designers, production designers. We've launched a number of careers that way. Composers, you know, people who get to do their first film with us. Like our second film is called Shifty. The composer who did that, then when that launched his career, and he then went on to do Shame, the Steve McQueen film that was a big worldwide hit, and lots of big stuff now. His career's launched for sure. So it's a great source of pride to us that it's not just about the filmmaking team, but it's about everybody. So it's like a competition, the way it works, in that you have to have a writer, director, producer attached, and all of those positions have to be filled. And then the director, basically we announce that we're open for funding and for applications. We do this once every 18 months usually. It's not a rolling fund. You can't just apply whenever you want to. You just have one opportunity every 18 months. You have to have a show reel. The director has to do something. So it's very difficult for us to work with theatre directors, for instance, unless they've done something themselves already, like a short. So the show reel can be ads, short films, alternative content, music videos, anything basically that's visual medium, artist film. You have to have a London-based production company. The script has to be a full draft. Now it can be obviously first draft, most of them usually are. We don't develop from treatment unless it's a documentary. We do make documentaries, not many, but we have made one so far, and we'd like to make another. And then we ask that you put a package together that includes a budget so that you're thinking about this as a micro-budget film, that there's a degree of professional application to your proposal. And also thinking about schedule and marketing proposal and how you're maybe going to raise the money and maybe cast and any other artistic elements that you'd like to show us. Are there any questions before I carry on? Can you wait for the mic? Or are you going to ask in English or okay? Oh yeah, no, you still need the mic because she needs to translate. No.
Hello.
That's it.
Hi, my name's Kay. Thanks for coming today. I just wanted to ask you something. You just mentioned earlier that that the marketing you want to leave to the sales and distributors, but then why are you asking for it in the proposal for the application?
Well, because the professional, you have to have the professionals when the film's done. What we ask for is the marketing proposal is before the film's obviously made, in that it's really important for filmmakers to just think about who the audience is, not to give us a very detailed marketing campaign, but to just think about what if they were marketing their movie, which nowadays we all have to think about. You can't just leave it because of social media. That's also the future. Okay. That you thought about what that might look like. What are the hooks? How would you sell it? You don't need to do a poster or any of those things. It's kind of we give a kind of key pointers in the application process, so you don't have to do a massive amount of work. You just have to think about it.
Okay, thanks.
My question is, how do you look at the quality of the writing? I mean, how do you, on the basis of the writing of the scripts, how do you back the right talent? How do you look at it?
Well, it's not just based on script, but a lot of it is much more about the idea and the ambition and the skill of the director. And
so do you meet them before?
Yes, we do. Now, the way it works is that you apply. We have about 100 applications each time. We read every script. We look at everything. I look at every show reel, and then we narrow it down to 25 teams. We meet all of them, and then we shortlist to 12, and that's how many we develop. So we develop 12, and we make 1 or 2 films a year, but we develop more than we can make.
So what's the whole flow? How many months does it take until the final pitching?
It takes 4 months. So you have 4 days intense workshop, then you have 4 months to go away and do more work, and then you pitch to our Greenlight committee.
To your committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, as I said, the deal is that we offer 50% of the finance towards the £120,000 maximum budget, and the BBC, so it's guaranteed release on the BBC, which in the UK is prestigious. That still guarantees a lot of viewers that the TV rights are with the BBC. But what's happened on every single film to date, and I'll talk more about this later, is that all of the films have been theatrically released in the UK and several around the world. But the idea was at the start, well, even if we don't necessarily know we can get these films into cinemas, at least we can show them on other platforms and give people a break that way. But as it's turned out, it's been much more successful than anyone anticipated. So as I said before, the basic £120,000 pays for basic digital delivery, and all rights must be cleared for international sales on this budget. So music, it's hard to buy well-known tracks unless you're best friends with the composer. Most of it is original score. For documentaries, it means that you can't really afford much archive. It means that most stuff has to be original. And as I said, if the films are successful and other financiers want to put up more money, then we allow that more post-production costs can be spent. So the way the back end works, which is basically the financial data and the important stuff for filmmakers and how their deal works, is that this is a very, very unusual structure, especially for independent films and especially for state-funded films. Usually, as I explained, the reason why production budgets tend to be higher across the world, or have been, is that filmmakers never get paid unless you get paid out of the production budget. And so it's a terrible economic model for filmmakers on the whole, unless you make a huge, huge success. And then you can maybe make money, but that's very unusual. So most of the time, people inflate production budgets in order to get paid that way because they don't think they'll ever be paid again. Our budgets are small, but you really do own a piece of the film, and you really can get paid forever, potentially, if you deliver something that's commercially successful. So from the very first pound of profit that comes in the door from a sale of the UK, in the UK or internationally, 40% of that goes automatically to the producer, and that is then divided. We pre-agree who owns the points, those 40% that belong to the producer. So the lion's share go to the director, writer, producer, but everybody else benefits, cast and crew. And so everyone owns a piece of the film, so there's a real stake. And then 60% goes to us or any other investors. And so any other investors can't touch what the producer, the filmmakers own. They have to, if they want to invest in one of our films, they have to sit alongside us, which is also very unusual. And I don't necessarily need to explain the rest of that slide. So there are other support from other budgets and other costs. Creative Skill Set is the UK training body, and they have a fund and they support all of our training and mentoring. And we do this on a bespoke basis, so each film is different. As I said, we encourage all the filmmakers to tell us where they feel they need support, and so each mentoring package looks different. And so we really want to be bespoke and make sure that we're not dictating what kind of training or what kind of support each film gets, because every film is different. And we get very high-level supporters, which is very important that the older generation, as I said, give back to the young generation. And they get as much from this as the young filmmakers, in that it's very rewarding. Asif Kapadia made the film Senna, which was about Ayrton Senna, which was a big hit for Universal last year. He mentored one of our filmmakers, and then he loved the scheme so much he applied with the project as a producer. So that's quite an amazing outcome, and several of those that are happening now in the last few years. And the other thing for us is that we're not just supporting people in their 20s, we're also, a number of our filmmakers, one of the films coming up is directed by someone who's in his late 50s. It's his first feature as a director, and he's a very well-known playwright, but equally had lost his kind of status in the industry. He had got forgotten about, and he's an amazing writer. And I met him, and I had encouraged him basically to apply. So I'm very happy that, you know, it's not just for young talent, it's for new talent, can be a range of ages. And yeah, we also, because of my and several other members of the team's extensive marketing, sales and distribution understanding and contacts, it means that we can help with that process, and that's very important. 50% of what you do is making the film, and 50% is actually getting it out to the world, and that's the really hard part. That's where people struggle, that's where good films just disappear because they don't know how to make that work.
Isn't that where your experience as a distributor helped, right, in building the scheme?
Yes, definitely. It really does, in terms of contacts and, yeah, building up the profile. So it means that now, whenever we have a finished film, we show it, we do a screening, and every major sales agent and every distributor in the UK comes to see the movie. And that's just so important. That's very hard to do if you're doing it by yourself. Whereas because we've got a profile, we can make sure that everybody who should be there is there, and that's the hardest thing to do. So we're very proud that, yeah, we can do that, and that's important because it's very hard to get their attention otherwise. So the summary of the aims is find the filmmaking talent of the future and give them a professional experience that sets them up for a whole career. Enable talent to get first feature film credit, but across all departments. It's so hard sometimes for people breaking into features. It's a very, well, certainly in the UK, it's a very snobby, difficult, you have to know people to get in often. It's very hard to break in. And, you know, we discourage that as much as possible. For us, it doesn't matter that people haven't got a feature film credit. We encourage, you know, people to take more risks on each other as well, on crew. And as I said, we've discovered some great designers and editors and DPs that way. It's not just for the young, as I said, it's just for, you know, all new talent, basically, to spread their wings and to basically go on to have bigger careers. And we focus on the whole, from development, production, through to sales and distribution. So I'm just going to scroll through a few of the films that we've made. This was our second film. This really made the scheme become very well known in the UK and internationally. I just did a talk for Sundance in London, actually, and I was amazed to meet all the Sundance Film Festival programmers, and they all knew about Microwave, despite the fact that none of our films have been there yet. And they were talking about how brilliant the scheme was and how much they'd like to work with us. And so it's amazing that, and this film sort of started the ball rolling with that kind of international profile. A lot of the US got very excited about this film particularly, and it basically has launched the career of Riz Ahmed, who's the actor on the right. He's now a leading man he's actually now in the US filming quite a big movie. So the scheme also launches actors' careers as well. The film was nominated for 5 British Indie Film Awards, which is There's the BAFTAs, the British Academy, and then basically the next award ceremony that most of the industry pay attention to are the BIFAs, they're called, the British Indie Film Awards. And we were nominated against big films that cost like 20 times the budget of ours. And so that was kind of an amazing triumph. We got 5 nominations, and we had a bidding war for the UK distribution rights. And the film ended up doing, it wasn't a blockbuster, but it did quite respectably. £172,000 is a decent art house gross, UK box office gross, and it's been a real major hit on VOD and DVD and has returned profits. And so it's sold to a number of countries, including US, Canada, Scandinavia, Australia, and a big sales agent who are called Protagonist, who we just done another deal with. So the way the budget breaks down, originally at the beginning of the scheme, the films were made for £100,000. So between 2006 and 2009, that was the budget, and then we put the budget up because it was just becoming too hard to make these movies, too difficult for the teams. So it's roughly every film is 17 or 18 days shooting, usually 6-day weeks on average, so 1 day off. The whole point of the process and the way that we develop very carefully is that everything is planned ahead of time so that there is a unity between the creative and the practical, in that all the money is going on screen and that you can see every penny on the screen rather than wasted. So this film was actually shot on Super 16 because the filmmaker actually wanted to shoot on film at that time. So this was 2007, this was shot. And he was used to the filmmaking film 16mm. And so he decided that he just wanted to, it was also a time when no one was really using the cameras or the stock. So we got a really good deal, and it meant that it was better to do it that way. So that meant it's hard on the actors, but they were quite established actors, and so they actually liked doing quite a long rehearsal but having very few takes. So on average number of takes was 2, and then you have to turn around, you have to get it. So on average number of setups per day is 20 to 25, which is more like a TV schedule. So it means that all your locations need to be pretty near to each other. You can't do big crew movements. Everything has to be very contained, and on this film, everything was in a 3-mile radius. And 9 principal cast. You can't have lots of extras. You know, what you often do is you have to make sure that the script is as efficient as possible. So very often in the development process, what happens is characters get combined, and you know, you focus very much on a small number of characters and a small number of locations, in order that doesn't mean to say you have to be unambitious about the film visually. It shouldn't be boring. It shouldn't all be contemporary or social realism. As much as possible, we want to encourage people to be ambitious, but just practical about what you can do, because time is money and you don't have much of it. So you need to be very, very efficient in how you spend it.
Have you ever thought of having a planned break in between the 18 shooting days?
We've not done that, no, because of that, the problem is actors usually with that, and very often with our movies we're getting quite established actors. Because the scheme's become well known, the level of casting ambition has gone up, and so we just did a movie with Ben Whishaw, who's Q in the last Bond film. He's becoming quite a big star. He fitted this in between big studio pictures. So on the whole, you can't do that because of actors, and also there's a point at which you get into the rhythm and the continuity. People tend to really like, you know, keeping the energy up and just blasting through. What we do break usually for is the edit.
Right, so the whole apprenticeship or the workshops take place before you start to shoot. So
Yep.
the 18 shooting days, you just go.
Yes,
And
yes.
you don't have any more apprenticeship around you.
No,
So you just
other than
shoot.
having mentors who you can call if there's any problem, if there's anything
Right,
that
but
you...
not analyzing the material.
No, they're just there to help. They're just there for advice. They're not for no other reason. So all of the workshopping and the development over the initial 4 days is where most of the development work is done. So these are our second and third films, Mum and Dad and Freestyle. They were both released in cinemas in the UK. One's a horror film. One is a basketball movie, a quite unusual proposition from the UK. That was important because that was they were African Caribbean origin filmmakers, and that there are just very few, despite quite a sizable population in the UK. There are very few directors, and so that was and not many stories told, and so that was important for us to back. It's also important that we back people and talent who we see not getting the opportunities otherwise. So that means that, yeah, often cultural diversity is important to us. Backing female writers and directors particularly, that's important to us too. I'd like to show you the trailer of this one, so because I've talked for a long time, but you haven't actually seen anything yet. So this is Strawberry Fields.
And I like fields. Torn into beautiful ribbons, tearing up the sky. You know I'll always hurt you, babe, with these colors.
How did she find me? Why didn't you pick up your phone? You can't just leave me on my own like that. You know I can't manage without you. I'm just trying to help. Kev trouble, Gillian.
You let her control you. You give her everything she wants.
I'm just trying to be me. Me and my sister are way too good for trash, aren't you? You're a wonderful sister. Don't leave me. It's just a game. Come and find me.
Thanks. So that movie, thank you, was shot in 17 days outside of London. So this was really a tough film to make because the budget had to provide for hotels and catering, and obviously we usually do feed crew, but when you're having to overnight people and they can't go home, there's an additional strain on the budget. So that was really difficult. Since we made this movie, everything we've done has been in London because this was an interesting lesson. It's very hard. I mean, it's an amazing film considering it was so tricky to make. Just in that it was difficult on resources when a vast amount of your budget is just going on hotels and on things that you can't see on screen. But the actors were fabulous and we're very proud of this film. This was our first female writer-director, Frances Lee, and this was nominated for a Best Debut Award in the British Independent Film Awards and got some very good reviews and a theatrical release in the UK and many festivals worldwide.
Jacob, please wait for the microphone. We are having a translation here. Thank you.
I saw that you produced Ill Manners film that was and that film was shot in 18 days in that scheme, because I saw that film.
No, I'll come to that later. This is Ill Manners didn't conform to our. It did originally, and then it ended up costing more money. But I'll come to that.
Right, thank you.
This is our case study.
Strawberry Fields, yeah, that was a little bit more, £108,000. It was some hot new actors, one of whom is Prometheus, the Ridley Scott movie. It premiered at the London Film Festival, and that's some basic information on what happened to that movie. This is our first documentary, The British Guide to Showing Off. That was also released in cinemas in about a year and a half ago, our first documentary. And this is about a kind of fabulous party that happens every year, and it's kind of a mad pageant, and it's very eccentric and very English. This screened at lots of film festivals, Karlovy Vary, Rome, Gothenburg, etc., and again got a cinema release. Ill Manners, this is the case study. So actually I'd quite like to first of all show the trailer for Ill Manners, and then I'll talk about how we made this and why it broke our rules. You have to have, if you can only break your own rules though.
Are you picking up off Chris?
I don't pick up anything from Chris. I've kept that man in business ever since he was a wee picnic. He went away for 15 years. That's the only reason he's got my turf, but not for long.
Are you sitting comfortably? Or put your seatbelts on because you're in for a harrowing ride? Because this is Ill Manners, where darkness goes on at night. I am the narrator. Allow me to take you back and forth through time. To explain the significance of things you may think are insignificant now, but won't further down the line.
What's wrong with you? Can't understand English or something?
So this is the movie that broke all our rules. Basically, we developed it as normal. If you can put my presentation back up, thank you. And when the lead in this, Riz Ahmed, is also the lead actor in Shifty, the second film we made. And he called me and said, I'm attached to a really interesting project by this new talent, this guy who's a rapper who I'd heard of called Plan B, and he's written and wants to direct, and no one's letting him do it. He's been spending about 4 years doing tons of meetings, and no one's helped him do it, and I think maybe it should be a microwave film. I've told him to apply. So he tipped me off, and they applied as normal, and without a doubt, this stood out. And it's the debut of a guy who's now much more famous since we made this film. He's called Plan B. He became much more famous as a singer initially, and it was during the making of the film that he also became this huge pop star, which was a bit tricky, but it meant that we had to accommodate a big change in this man's career in order to help make this film. So we developed it extensively with him, and it really stood out as just he comes from the hip hop tradition, so hip hop is about storytelling. So his ability to tell stories would just really stood out. It's all about a particular part of East London. the movie, which is where he's from. He felt very passionate about telling a story about people who are forgotten and not noticed by the majority of the population. And it just had this incredible authenticity to it and this raw talent. And we were just all unanimous about the fact that this just really stood out. And but as we were making it, he suddenly launched this new album. It went really mad. He suddenly became a pop star right when we were shooting. And so it meant that we just couldn't get everything then. We had to break, we had to come back, and basically we had to give them a shot at finding more money and, you know, more resources and also satisfying his kind of revised ambitions. So basically this film cost around £450,000, so that's much more than our original budgets. But the fact was that we just had to, you can establish rules, but you also have to be prepared to break them, because every project is different, and it doesn't make sense to establish a rule that the films are made for £120,000 or less, unless you can sometimes go, okay, you know, for whatever reason, we have a special situation where this film needs to be more. So we shot for that amount of money, but ended up spending more than that as we went. It's still a micro-budget film. £460,000 is still a pretty small budget. That film was our biggest hit to date. It's been a significant, it got 150 cinema release in the UK, which is amazing. That's competing against big budget movies. And it's a major hit it's one of the first major British hits on VOD. And we sold it to Sky, which is very unusual for them to buy small indie films. And it was a really significant success. It was the distributor Revolver have now unfortunately gone bust, so that's become a bit of a nightmare for us. That's another reason why what we're doing on our next film, which I'm going to come to in a sec, is getting involved in distribution more ourselves, which is also what everyone here and everyone who's interested in the independent sector in doing feature films needs to be thinking about next, which is not necessarily self-distribution, but direct distribution, and being much more part of not the old system where you sell the rights to your film and to a distributor who then makes all the money and maybe you get some of it, but usually you don't. The next generation is basically knowing how to do that bit yourself too, or at least finding the people who can help you do that. So are there any questions on Ill Manners before I move on from that? Gosha, did you have anything to ask?
Yes, but Kay, please, have a question.
Mia, so it went up to 450,000. Did the cost of did the minimum wage still remain the same, or was it the distribution cost that took it up to 450?
No, it wasn't. Minimum wage had to. Yeah, you can't break those kind of rules. So they just did a lot more shooting, a lot more pickups, a lot of stuff needed to be redone. And because his ambition got bigger, and he found the money, so we kind of had to go along with that. We didn't have to, but we felt that it was necessary, that we should do that. So he went back and just did a lot more. There was 2 units doing lots more. The scale of the film and the sort of wraparound world and the way he showed London, just he wanted to do more with that. And so, and there's archive footage and there's a lot more to it. I don't know if you've seen the film, but it's got scale, and that's what he spent the money on, basically. So no, the marketing and distribution costs are always up to the distributor. That's always their risk. They always put that money up.
Okay, thanks.
I have this kind of reflection that sometimes life breaks the rules, because you said that during the production, the singer, Benjur, the Plan B, he got really, really popular. So basically, your main protagonist dictated your rules of the final step of the whole production, which is getting on the market, that you saw the potential.
Yes.
Was it that like the main reason to break the rules, or was it anything else that you noticed that really needed more support?
No, it was that he suddenly had all these demands on his time to do concerts and festivals. You know, he had to go off and do that. We couldn't stop him doing that, and so we just had to break production and just give him much more time to do that. And yeah, so it was a very unusual situation. Don't make films with pop stars, especially not if they're directors, especially not in the middle of becoming very famous. It's quite tricky. But yeah, it was just the right thing to do. We just had to. And yeah, we don't want, it's hard. It was very hard on everyone to take so long to make the film. But the film is really good. So, and it's actually been our biggest hit internationally. It sold to 20 countries worldwide. It was at Toronto Film Festival. It's really kind of gone up a level for us now because of Ill Manners. So we have that to thank.
Yeah, yesterday we spoke about how music really influences film, and sometimes, last year, for example, I told you about the director Jan Komasa and his debut, The Suicide Room, and he shared with us that he got a song from a very popular group, and he did not realize at that time that it might just, you know, broaden the audience and the distribution. Was that the case when you selected it for the microwave, the plan B and the music as well? Do you look at it?
Yeah, it was always intended as a kind of hip-hop musical. But it was before, his big success as a pop star, so we hadn't heard any of that stuff. When we selected him, he had a very cult following. It was small, much smaller, so no one knew what would happen. But that was always the plan. It was always he always wanted to make, like in the amazing French movie, the Mathieu Kassovitz film, he wanted to make a British version of that, but with music very much important part of it. So yeah, that is what he pulled off, I think. So the next movie is
having a question?
Yep. The boss has a question.
I mean, it was a successful story, but you know, I can easily imagine, you know, that you know could have a very bad end. You know, it's a very typical philosophy in Hollywood, just to make a studio pregnant. You know, they have to deliver. You know, and what you would do, you know, I mean, just speaking simply in theory, you know, in case in which you see everything goes wrong. Do you have any scenario in a script and a plan for this kind of procedure, you know, to stop reproduction, you know, risk management, you know, how to control something which goes badly?
As much of it's all in the preparation. So as much as possible, we are very, very stringent about budget control, about the costing of the films and the development of the script. That all of that has to work very, very carefully and that the risk management is done before you get to the filming. So that in order that as much as possible, the filming is the bit that you're so prepared for, you know exactly how it will work. And of course there are always going to be stuff that you need to react to, but that we're prepared, that, you know, and we're around, that we can react to every situation. So that's why we have a well-known, you know, we're there with much more experience, and we have mentors there too, in order that people around the filmmakers have experience of every issue that can come up and how we best deal with it. And so as much as possible, it's really in the preparation so we haven't yet done a film that's improvised, and you know, most of it is quite heavily scripted. A lot of the time we do improvisation so they workshop with the actors, and then that goes into the script. So there is a flexibility there, but as much as possible, that's still done up front. Yeah, we found that you just have to be rigid in the production schedule, because it's just too difficult otherwise to deliver the film. And then what happened to Ill Manners happens, which is then you're 4 times over budget, which in that situation was okay, but it was really tricky, and we'd rather not do it. We've done it 7 times without that happening, so it happened once, and it may well happen again. But yeah, I agree with you from what we talked about earlier, that, you know, risk management is absolutely vital, because you can't throw money at the problem because there isn't any. But it's interesting, it means that you come up with much more creative solutions very often because you have to. And it's also important that the crew and the financiers and everybody around understands what they're doing and why, and that they're in it for the right reasons, that they're all wanting to make the best possible film. And so you find that egos are managed and more manageable, and people are much more willing to just find the solution than you find in the studio model, where, you know, so much of it is about power. I mean, it's just not, we just don't have those situations, thank God. They can do that on the next film when they become famous. So Borrowed Time is our new film. This is not out yet. This is the first UK film to raise its marketing budget. P&A is basically an industry term for what it costs to get the film into cinemas. So we're the first film to raise its marketing budget on Kickstarter. I'm sure you all know what Kickstarter is. Has anyone used Kickstarter to raise money yet? No, you should do. It's amazing crowdfunding source. So we raised £25,000 for the marketing budget. It started off as friends and family, and then it went viral. So we don't know all the people that put into that fund. So it's quite a fascinating model, and it means that we can then control how we distribute. So the filmmakers came to us and said, we don't want to do a distribution deal. We showed it to all the distributors we'd got 2 offers. They were kind of boring companies, and they were not very adventurous marketing plan for getting the film into cinemas in the UK. And the film said, we just really want to do something different, and we want to do it ourselves. And so we encouraged them to have a look at that and see whether or not it was possible, and they raised the money. The BBC were so pleased to see that they'd done this, that they donated another £5,000. And now we've just got a grant from the British Film Institute to match that £25,000. So it means that we now have £50,000 to release the film, which is a very good marketing budget. And we are doing a very progressive, very unusual release ourselves. We've arranged one of the best digital agencies. So it's called direct distribution because basically it's that the filmmakers are giving the film to the audience in a much more direct way. It's not necessarily self-distribution, because it doesn't just mean that the filmmakers are the only ones who are part of the releasing. Usually when a film is self-distributed, it usually means that you haven't managed to sell it, and therefore your only option is to do it yourself. The future is direct distribution, and there are amazing people like Ted Hope, who I'm sure you've all heard of, who are doing amazing stuff on this in North America. Documentary is way ahead of fiction in this format, and the future is really being progressive in this area. So the film will be in cinemas for 1 week, and then it will be available on VOD, exclusively on Vimeo. Then we'll go to other platforms, and then we'll tour the film to cinemas around the country with the actors and filmmaking talent. So it will be like a kind of mini festival, like a kind of rock band going on the road, basically touring the film around the country. And we've assembled a number of partners that all really like the film and want to do something much more innovative in distribution. There is no point making films in an innovative way unless that side of things catches up. And so this is a very important case study when it comes out in the UK in August, because this will be the first film to have done it in the UK, and I think one of the first to do it in Europe. The US are doing this much more commonly than us, but we're catching up.
And just to mention that Mia also brought borrowed time and ill manners. You have a question, sorry?
How do you handle technically your distribution in this new challenging time when you have to be extremely flexible for every format, for every request? Do you handle that yourself or you have partners?
No, we have a post-production partner who will handle all of the kind of distribution of the KDMs and the digital copies and getting the progress files and all of that. They're one of the partners that we've put together because it's important for their business. They service a lot of distributors and they want to get much closer to the filmmakers. So that's something that they will be servicing, and then we're cutting them into the profits of the film. So we're putting together them, post-production house, a digital marketing company, a PR company, and us and the filmmakers. And so it's a partnership, basically, that everyone, if the film's a success, everyone has profits from the release. But that's a tricky thing to do yourself. You have to have a company that helps. It doesn't necessarily cost that much money either, but that part of the £50,000 that we've raised will pay for some of that. Because that's another thing, that cinemas will often be very reluctant to take smaller films like this because they think that they're not marketed or distributed or technically, delivered properly. And so we've put together really high-level professionals who will assure the cinemas and all of the other platforms, the VOD platforms, etc., that the quality of the film is not in any way compromised. And nowadays it doesn't have to be. There are lots of partners, and technically it's just so much easier than when it was film. And it's a huge benefit to independent movies that everything's gone digital, and it just means that you're not stuck with how it used to be, which was shipping 35mm prints around the country for 6 months. That was incredibly, incredibly expensive and very difficult and very technically imperfect. Now we don't have to worry about that.
Another question as well for the borrowed time. So it's your 8th production. At the very beginning, you mentioned Kickstarter. Throughout these 7 productions, you have already built your family, the microwave family, right? So it was easier to launch it. Well, because I came across with different opinions on Kickstarter, they are, in Europe, there are not really spectacular results of it, and it's more a promotional tool, isn't it? Wouldn't you agree with me that it's more into the promotion of the film rather than fundraise?
I think that will change, and I think we just have to be better at how we use it. And I mean, we raised £25,000 on it, so it worked for us, and it was the first film to do that. I just think you have to really know how it works. You can't just rely. It's like all of these platforms. Half of it is having a chance to expose your film. Half of it is about how much you know about it, exploiting that opportunity and viral marketing. And so we just made sure that we just knew how to promote it, we just got lucky, and we had a digital marketeer who helped promote it and make sure it goes viral. You just need someone who's an expert in that stuff, and that doesn't cost money. You just need some part of the team who's going to work at that, who cares about it and knows how social media can really make things go viral. But that you can't just expect it to happen. It takes some work. But I think Kickstarter will grow, and they're doing a lot more work now in Europe. It was there's Indiegogo as well. They were originally only American, and now they realise the big opportunity in Europe. And so I think it's up to filmmakers to embrace that too. They're doing a lot of work. They're at a lot of European festivals. They're doing a lot of focus on Europe and encouraging more fundraising and bigger budget stuff. So I would say don't give up hope.
Okay, I won't.
I got a question about that Ill Manners film, because when you made a film, you as a producer, yeah, you gave the money for the film, but when Ben drew in the middle, like you said, he made a career and he gave the money, you know, take by himself somewhere. So how did you solve the who gets money then after the film will make a success? Did he made the money on that situation that he put the other side of the budget to this film, or you just keep the rights to that film, all the rights? How did you solve that?
Well, we don't own the rights, but we always have the rights are always vested with us, and we then do the deals. So that never changes. With the finance, he raised the money,
Yeah.
and but we didn't change our deal. So we said, okay, you can raise more money. We're happy for you to spend more on this, but our deal is not going to change, because otherwise it's not fair on all of the crew and the cast and all of the people that have.
And he agreed for that with no problem, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
But that was very important, because otherwise it's just not fair. It's also, it's difficult when something breaks the rules, because then everyone then, the next lot of filmmakers start to see that, oh, well, maybe I can make our movie for £200,000, and it's difficult to contain it. So actually we did another one, and that went back to £120,000. And so this is the latest film with Ben Whishaw, who is in Cloud Atlas and Skyfall, the Bond film, and is a really exciting British actor and kind of probably going to be a major star. This is his first contemporary film. Actually, he's done a lot of period films, and this is the first contemporary film he starred in. We're very lucky to get him. Again, actors are very... We're tending to find a lot of quite major British actors are happy to do our movies, because they are admirers of the previous work, and they see how good the acting is and what it does for the actors' careers. So it means that you can be as ambitious for casting as possible. And we encourage that across the board. You know, even if you don't have much money, still be ambitious with, you know, go if you want a designer or a DP who's done big stuff, go after them and ask. You just never know. They might just want to do something that they feel that they give back more. They might be jaded by doing too many big budget movies. They might want to kind of mentor someone more, and that's happened several times. So that's true of actors and lots of heads of department, that we ask people to, you know, just because you've got a small budget doesn't mean to say you have to apologise and not be ambitious about what you're making and what you're trying to do. And it's amazing how many people are happy to have that conversation, especially because the scheme is now well known. And so it means that the scheme, it just helps open doors for the next film and the next project. And that's great. Everyone benefits from that. Like with the guys who made Shifty, their second film is called Welcome to the Punch, and that was made for £5 million. So they went from a £100,000 budget to making a £5 million follow-up. That's a huge leap. And Ridley Scott saw Shifty and loved it, and exec produced their second film. And they're now about to make a film for £20 million called Autobahn. So their career is off and running. So this is the new film. This is a drama. This has been sold to Artificial Eye, who are really the top art house distributor in the UK. They've never bought any of our films before, and we pre-sold this on the basis of the script and on Ben Whishaw and on the director's short films. And that's very unusual too. So that again is because of the success of the previous films. We can have conversations with people that in the past would not have been interested in a micro-budget movie. And then protagonists are selling it. They're a big UK sales agent who don't do that many micro-budget films, but we screened the film finished to sales agents just before Cannes, and we had a bidding war. We had 5 sales agents wanting it, many of whom were really the big guns who would never usually pick up small movies. So you know, and this is a really kind of profound, it's a film about grief, it's very moving, it's half in Mandarin, so it's British Chinese, and it's very unusual for a British film, I think, and that's why I think people got excited about it. That's another thing that we try and do, not repeat ourselves. We've made a number of urban films. Quite a lot of our directors have been in their 30s and male and white. So we try and not, and therefore their stories are kind of, protagonists of that kind. And as much as possible, we want to sort of not repeat ourselves and make films that are, trying to be interesting and reinvent it, microwave a little bit each time and not become slack and not, it's very important that we don't think, oh, we know exactly how to make micro-budget films now, let's just keep doing them. We need to keep questioning why. The big thing we feel very passionate about next is that the films need to cost a bit more money, because what's very difficult is the teams, the writer, director and producer, the people who don't make, they might be earning £1,000 for a year from the film. That is very hard. And that's something that I just think we can't continue backing. So we really want to up the budgets, but in order that the filmmakers get paid better from the production budget, and the below the line, i.e. the production costs are still the same, but that the teams get more money. So this is a little bit, am I all right for time actually? What time am I ending? It's 5:30.
We still have 10 minutes to go.
10 minutes, okay. I'm going to just quickly, this is mainly focusing on kind of story development and sort of when we're selecting projects and when we're developing the 12 down to the 2 that we're going to make. These are the kind of things that we've learned along the way. So, I mean, really, it's the oldest tip, but the one that never, ever goes out of fashion, which is find a great story. A story is absolutely what makes audiences compelled and go to see movies. It's a great story means you don't have to have big cast. Not everyone or anyone needs to be famous who's in the film. If the story is great and the story is unusual and the story stands out, or a combination of the story plus the setting, is what makes independent and especially micro-budget films a success. It's usually a story, in that a lot of the time, big budget films, the stories are not great, they're compromised enormously. And what we should be good at as independent filmmakers is story. And you don't need to compromise your idea just because you're making a film for a small budget. Writing to scale, few locations, or making sure the locations are within a small radius. We encourage genre. I mean, we've made some genre films, and a number of our films have been dramas, but we always encourage that there is another angle to the drama, that there is another way of selling it, like a coming-of-age story, or Lilting is a film is a movie about grief, and so there's other hooks. You have to think about how you're going to sell the movie, and so it's important to really, really figure out what would the poster look like. Not that filmmakers have to become marketeers, but just that you're really thinking the script and story development process, what other elements you could add that give you something else, give you a certain spark, give you a certain angle that will help make the film stand out. Often once the script often goes through another pass, another draft, once we figured out where the team decide the film's going to shoot, so that you're actually writing. Often that can be very inspiring, that you're actually writing, based on what you know is there and adapting accordingly. So we encourage a lot of work as you go, and we often do workshops with actors, so we're often getting actors' input into the script, and that again is still pretty unusual in the UK. very often actors are just not asked their opinion, which is kind of crazy given that they're the ones who are reflecting the characters. So basically, we encourage the people who want to be ambitious technically and visually, and making sure that the writer is part of that process, that editors give notes, cinematographers give notes, that everyone is listened to in the development process, which is still very unusual in the UK. Talented and experienced crew and cast want to do great work. As I said, they may not be put off by small budgets, and it's important to be ambitious. And usually our crews are a mix of seasoned professionals and first-timers, and that again is important, that everyone is there for a good reason. Everyone's paid minimum wage, and so as I said, this creates no hierarchy on the set. It means that everyone knows that they're being paid the same, and so there is no ego and no kind of diva tantrums, and everybody tends to work together because there's just no time to waste. So it means that often the sets are or usually always, the sets are very happy places and positive, and it's only 18 days, so it really doesn't last very long. And we've now found we have crew returning and actors returning, so we've almost got like a little it's almost like a theatre troupe that people want to come back because they really like the experience, and that's really important. It's very important to build a tribe, and that's what keeps us all going. It's inspiring to have people around you who want to make the same kind of work as you and do the same, have the same ambitions, and so when you find them, keep hold of them. And so that's a lovely thing about having running a scheme like this, that you can create like a family, as Gosha said. So yeah, everyone gets paid a small amount, but everyone also owns a piece of the film at the back end. So they all have a part of profits, from the runner through to the lead actor. And so this is incredibly important, that people should feel proud of their work and that they're being repaid for it. And a number of films have already paid out. So I think, just to summarise, what the scheme has contributed to is a change in the UK, definitely, in the perspective on micro-budget films and the quality, and there are a number of other schemes that have now doing the same thing that we're doing, and a number of people doing it themselves, and that's really fabulous. We're really happy. We can't make all the films that we select, and often they go off and do it themselves, and that's brilliant. We're very happy. Copying is the highest form of flattery, so we're very happy to give all that information away and let people go off, and hope people can go off and do it themselves. Yeah, it's definitely contributed to a change in UK film culture. At the kind of debut feature film level, budgets have come down, and I think that is a good thing. I don't think this is a business model. I don't think you should always make movies at this level, but I think it's a great place to start. It means we're discovering way more talent, we're giving way more opportunities than you ever can at higher budget level, because people don't want to take risks. And we've got proven discovery skills, so I'm very proud that something's working. I don't think I have anything else to say.
Any questions? We still have some time. Jack asks.
Thank you.
Mia, sorry. When will the next microwave scheme open again? Because you've got there are 4 films in distribution. In development for 2013 and 14, but when do you see it being open again?
We're not sure when we're going to open again, because we've got to raise more money for the whole scheme for the next round. So hopefully in about a year, I think we'll be ready, and hopefully it will be slightly higher budget. And so it should be in about a year's time. And as I said, it's really important to come to places like this and to talk to travel internationally, because we're really interested in doing co-production. There may be a separate scheme or a one-off project where we're doing talent swaps between two territories and maybe shooting in one and bringing crew from another, or, you know, there's lots of ways that you could kickstart international co-productions. So because the UK is not making many international co-productions, that's kind of died off because of financing and the way the kind of financing structures worked. And so we're really keen on trying to do something with another country as well, or several.
Okay,
So
thanks.
yeah, I'm interested in talking to anyone about that if they're interested.
I got a question. How do you solve the problem with the rights to the screenplay when someone is, because the screenplay you buy it, yeah, when you do the film for your film, or the rights are in the guy who made this?
No,
stays.
It's never that. No, I mean, in the US you might do an outright sale and then the studio owns it.
Yeah.
On the whole, the way it usually works is that the rights are assigned to the company making the film. So you don't really buy them, but they're assigned by the creator. And that's how we work. So those rights have to be signed over, and then in return the writer gets paid for those and gets a portion of the profits.
The minimum wage scheme is applied to creative talents or technical crew as well?
Yes.
Everybody get the same?
They're on the
Electricians, sparks, you know, everybody get the same, yeah?
Yes.
Thanks.
So the runner earns the same as the cinematographer?
Yes. On the whole. I mean, sometimes we do buyout fees, so it may be that if you're on for 10 days, you come to a set number, and it may be just slightly higher or lower, but on the whole, it's, yeah, minimum wage per day.
The rest fees from when the film starting to sell.
There is Rafa there.
It's the same percent for every person.
Do you want to wait for the mic? Oh, you got it.
The rest of the fee when the film is starting to selling very good for the whole crew is the same amount of money for the.
That's up to the producer. Usually, heads of department and main cast get a bit more than you know, lower ranks or people. That basically it should be proportionate to the amount of time you've spent on the film. Yeah.
Average number of the people on location, crew?
Usually 35 cast and crew, so it's still relatively small. You know, we've done 2 films on Super 16. Usually it's been the Red, actually, and the last one was the Alexa. And so it's pretty small, contained crew. On the whole, we've never done anything in a studio. Everything's been on location. And most of them are in London in order that cast and crew can go home at night. Yeah, we did one film that wasn't, and that was really hard. So I would recommend, you know, if you're working at this budget level, the best way is sort of following a similar paradigm in order that the money goes on screen. And, yeah, usually original score. We've had some really good... the one thing that we don't compromise on, I haven't really talked about the edit process at all. We really advocate a long edit process. As you were saying earlier when we were talking, that we start editing from day one of shoot, absolutely vital. The editor should then feed in, you know, coverage is essential, so make sure that the editor and director are speaking every single night, and cinematographer, and that, you know, because you really can't afford to do pickups. You may afford to do a day, but that's it. So you have to be very efficient, and the edit usually lasts, on the whole, about 12 to 16 weeks. We often advocate that you break in the middle because everyone gets tired up to a certain point. It's often very exhausting on the director. People need to go off and earn some money. So we have to be, we let people just take as much time as they need to finish the film. Sometimes it's a year, 9 months to a year, because people just need to go off and earn some money, get their heads together, come back, and that's fine by us. We don't push people to finish quickly, and especially the edit, that is a really great thing to go away from and come back to. And so we often have pretty long edits in that you'll have 2 weeks off and then come back. And yeah, I don't know if there's any other tips I would say, but yeah, I think that's important as well, to just be flexible about when films are delivered. Very often when you're making films for high budget level, they're not, and everything's really pushed for a delivery deadline. And we never, I think that's a part of the reason that the films are successful, is they're ready when they're ready, within reason, because you can't spend much more money on them. But we do allow people to raise extra if they need to. So very often for post-production, more money's raised.
Hi. So your organization is like a
Where am I
development
looking?
center.
Oh, there you are.
Sorry, like a development center, actually, right?
Yes.
You take new people. You are doing normal movies, right, for people to watch. Okay, so I want to how to apply.
How do you apply?
Yeah. You never mentioned about it even.
So basically, we announce, it's like a competition. So
Yeah.
we announce once every year, 18 months, and you have to apply with a script, a London-based production company, a show reel,
Yeah.
and there's a form online, and you upload everything to us basically.
Yeah.
And the rules that you have to have a London-based production company, and all the principal filmmaking team have to be UK. You have to be paying tax in the UK. You don't necessarily have to be a UK national, but you have to be paying tax and resident.
But to send you through email is okay, or something like this?
It's all uploaded. It's done all online. So
it's all online.
Yeah.
Oh, so all the meetings eventually later on are through internet as well.
No, when we select, we get you in,
Okay.
but yeah, they can be.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. So it's easier. It's cheaper and easier, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, sure. Question down here?
Do you influence technical standards? How do you avoid disasters?
Like what would you say would be a terrible technical disaster?
You mentioned, for example, shooting on red.
Mm-hmm.
Then the whole post-production complications. Do you have your own technical advisory group?
Yes, we have a deal with Technicolor. So most of our films are done through them in the post-production process. Not all of them. Sometimes the producers will have their own relationships with other post-production houses. So we always have a post-production supervisor as part of the crew and part of the team in the planning process as well, in order to avoid any of those nightmares. Yep. And then the backup of a proper post-production company. Very often, a lot of the films, part of the financing has been from post-production companies, in order that they have a real stake in the film and that we get a great service. So they may not be paid fully rate card costs, but they own a piece of the film, and then it's good for them for future relationships. But yeah, that's a very good point. It's very important to have those, to have that kind of support should anything go wrong.
All right, just to wrap up then. I'm very happy that Filmspring and Microwave, they have common goals. So to help start and launch careers for emerging filmmakers. That's a very impressive scheme. And thank you for sharing all this experience with us. And on Sunday, we have the possibility to screen one of the films produced in the Microbudget Microwave scheme. So
yeah, Ill Manners,
Ill Manners
we were going to screen.
Yeah.
And there's a version with English subtitles, which makes it much easier, because the dialogue is not easy, even if you speak English, to understand. So there are English subtitle versions. So
English rap.
Yes.
All right, thank you. And we have part 2, which are 13 tips for success. So more soft skills for us filmmakers. Going back at the conference room in 20 minutes.
Thank you for staying with me. This presentation I thought was interesting to do in this context, where most of you are in the middle of making things and applying lots of different ideas and collaborations. And this is basically my tips, basically, that I have learned throughout my career from 21 years, actually, sorry, it's 22 years in film now. I obviously started as a child, as I said before. I was a teenager when I started, and I didn't go to film school. And I'm sure many of you have. But for me, it is really, a lot of it is about learning on the job and as you go. And the great thing about the film industry is that it doesn't really matter where you went to school, it's what you've done. And often you're only as good as your last film, which makes it quite scary. But also it means that you have to keep your skills and your talent and your knowledge current. And so this is really a kind of selection of ideas and concepts and tips I've gathered sort of throughout my career that I'd just like to share. And yeah, so it's really from being a distributor or sales agent on over 50 features, having won an Oscar for a production. I work in both documentary and fiction, which I absolutely love. And for me, documentary can inform on how you make fiction, and fiction methods can inform on how you also make documentary. And so that they're both incredibly important mediums to me. And in the last few years, I think documentary features have been doing much more innovative things with storytelling than fiction. And so this is also in the context of working with a lot of new talent. So please ask questions. I really prefer not to just talk at you. I'm really happy for this to be a discussion. So at any point that you have questions or a point to make, please go for it. Just wait for the mic and do ask questions in Polish because we can translate.
We could have a kind of a warm-up for them, maybe. Which one of you are film school graduates already? 2.
You're a bit shy there about putting your hand up.
And film schools now? You see, I guess it's never a rule, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has its own story to tell.
I always find that much more common. It's less common in the UK, I think, because we do have good film schools, but it's less common that everyone in film necessarily went to film school. There are lots of, maybe because there are lots of more opportunities, or to start a career off without actually studying. And so that's what I just got a job. I didn't even know what a film distributor was when I got my job in film distribution. It just said film, and I thought, yeah, that sounds good, I'll go for that. And I was supposed to go to university a year later, and I didn't, because the job was just too good. I thought, why would I bother going to university? And I never regretted that at all. But equally, I would love to go to film school at some point. I really would love to have a year off and do that, so I'm jealous as well. So yeah, this is, as I said, it's a selection of kind of random thoughts. So please ask questions or agree, disagree with me at any point. Just wait for the mic to come. So number one, something I think is really important, and a lot of what hopefully you're finding here or at film school is that it is really important to find like-minded people. And film is really about relationships. No one movie is ever made by one person, or very, very rarely, unless you're Robert Rodriguez, where you kind of do everything. And it's quite unusual and not to be recommended, I would imagine. And so it's really important that you nurture relationships. You don't necessarily have to be a people person. You don't have to be extrovert. You just have to find people who want to make the same kind of movies as you, people who inspire you. Very often it can be people who are very different to you, in which you are complementary to each other. I've worked with a lot of directors. The director of Lilting is a very quiet man. He is not a typical shouty director. He is not an extrovert, but he has a real quiet dignity and authority. And it was very important to understand that and collaborate with him in the right kind of way. It's also that he's he's Chinese origin, and so there's a cultural difference in how he wants to act and collaborate, and that was very important and actually very inspiring for me to get to know someone who had a kind of culturally different way of looking at telling stories. And it's very important to be very open to that. I'm talking very much as a producer, that you have to be someone who, you know, a lot of the time you're the mediator, so other people can have the big egos. You shouldn't have one. You should have a healthy enough ego that you feel confident in coming to the rescue when there are problems, and you need to be good at problem solving. And very often the problem solving is fixing and managing other people's ego clashes. But it is really, really important to find the people that you like and are inspired by and hold on to them. A very common thing is, for instance, the film that I won an Oscar for producing, Six Shooter, in 2006, I don't speak to the director anymore. We just stopped. After success can be a really difficult thing, and because it can split people up, it can divide people. Very often, especially in that situation, the writer-director is getting a huge amount of offers and attention, and he wanted to sort of leave us, the producers, behind. And actually, it was hard at the time, but in many ways, it was the best thing that happened to me, because it meant that I had to really try harder next time. And then 2 years later, I started doing Microwave. Actually, a year later, I started doing Microwave. And if I had just been his producer, I wouldn't have done that. I would just be his producer. And that, to me, is not as inspiring as what I've then done. And so there are lots of good things that can also come out of bad situations or situations that are hard. And I've seen it many times. I worked on a film called Tsotsi, which won an Oscar the same year. So the same year that we won for Six Shooter, I was also working as the head of marketing for that movie. And the director and the producer fell out. They don't speak either. So we had a very similar situation on two movies. And that's been very hard also for the producer. You know, that's a very typical thing. As soon as Hollywood comes calling, people behave badly. And it just doesn't need to happen. And it's really, you know, it's important to be nice to people on the way up, because you'll meet them on the way down. That is a classic film industry saying. And it's very important to look after each other. And, you know, if you are inspired by each other, then hold on to that relationship. And yeah, because it can often be strained and put a lot of stress put on it throughout the process, whether it works or not.
Would anyone like to share their view on the tribe, let's say, one of the film springers? I'm sure you meet each other here. I see Michał, one of the faithful participants.
Has anyone found their tribe yet?
He found the tribe. I see one.
Yeah, I kind of have that.
Yeah, Kasia, can I give the mic? Michał, you can actually tell us the story of the film, The Plane to the Next Bus Stop.
Well, I find a tribe, and Gosia is one of my tribals. So, yeah, I totally agree. And, well, I found it, but I'm still looking for new faces, new people. It's all organic, right? It's a constant learning and experiencing new adventures, new successes and fails, right? You find people that you'll totally soulmate with each other, and sometimes, well, different things happen. I totally agree with everything you said. I don't know what I could add to it. Well, I hope everybody can find their own tribe.
And it does change, as you said, and that's good, and that's part of kind of being mature throughout that process. That what worked before, it might stop working. People's lives change, circumstances change, everything changes. Nothing is constant. Everything should be evolving, and it's also quite hard sometimes to let that go. But sometimes the best things can come from that change.
Breakups can be hard, but
yeah,
you need to take the lessons all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, from the good stuff and from the bad stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So tip number 2, a magpie is a bird that steals things, usually gold and silver and glittery things. And so this is a tip that I think we all need to be as, I don't just mean this for writers and directors, this is true producers and everybody really who sees themselves working in the creative field, that stories and ideas and can come from anywhere, and you need to kind of keep collecting them. And literally, you know, I always have a notebook with me because, you know, you may just get on the bus and see a character who you find very strange and interesting, and there's something about them, you don't know what film it might work for or why, you just note it down. And I think this is just something I really encourage, that you just collect stories, fragments, characters, images, you know, as you go. And I mean, yeah, I'm old school and have a notebook, but I also, you know, there's great apps on your phone. There's an app called Magpie that you can collect images and etc. and cuttings and links and file it all together. And that's really brilliant. I really advocate that. You know, keep yourself fresh, keep yourself gathering ideas. They can come from anywhere. And it's important to kind of watch and listen and collect them, because so often things that I've seen and written down, I'll read back 2 years later and suddenly go, wow, that could be an amazing detail for this character on something I'm working on now. And it's really great when you can just add a little note that can just bring something alive. Okay, my clicker stopped working. Oop. Is there anyone in technical? Hello, my clicker stopped working. That's it, thanks. David Lynch, who I'm a huge fan of, I think he's a genius. The ideas dictate everything. You have to be true to that or you're dead. This is something I particularly find inspiring relating to micro-budget films and where I spend most of my time. You know, making low-budget movies that, you know, the ideas, yeah, everything is dictated by the idea, the way you arrange everything, the crew, the cast, everything, the way you put it together, the cost of the film, it all is dictated by the ideas and what that idea needs to do it justice. And that's a really important thing. Production budgets have to be reflected by the idea. So if the idea is radical and strange and really risky, then make it for a small amount of money. Don't go for state funding. Do it where you can just take a small risk financially, but a big artistic risk. Whereas if you're making something that needs, you know, it's a period film and therefore, you know, then you're getting into higher budgets and you need cast, etc. Then you're getting into much less you're getting into finance that are risk averse. So you're then going to have a lot of elements that are much more safe and secure. But that can be okay as long as the idea is justified and that the story is strong enough. And so often I see budgets of films being made for way more money than they should be because the idea is kind of small and therefore the budget should be small. And often, you know, you see higher budget films, they're just kind of artistically kind of dead and boring because they've just done something in a kind of a normal, regular way. And independent film has to be clever. It has to take that as the principle, that the idea dictates everything. The enemy of art is the absence of limitations. I do like pretentious quotes, so bear with me. Orson Welles, another incredible filmmaker, very inspiring. This is also particularly something I've learned with relation to being a producer, but particularly making low-budget movies, is that deadlines are good, not being able to do something or pay for something. Like high budget movies throw money at the solution. Does it make them better? Very often not. It's sometimes really, really creatively freeing to be able to have to solve a problem by being smart and being creative about it. And it can be very liberating. When this first really, really dawned on me was when I worked on a film that was actually shortlisted for an Oscar, but it didn't actually get nominated, by someone called Lucy Walker, who's now a very formidable documentary director and has been nominated for an Oscar several times. And I worked on one of her early movies, and the producer was a Walmart heiress. And Walmart is, you know, the huge, insanely, like, gazillionaire retail chain in America. And this woman had huge amounts of money, and anytime anything didn't work on the film, she would throw money at it. So we went through 3 scores, 3 different editors. She edited for 18 months. And it was very hard on the director, because the director, she would just pay for stuff, and she would use her money to get the director out the way in many ways. And it was a difficult movie to make, and it ended up being a great film. But it was very interesting to work with someone who, before that, I think I would have always thought, well, when I get a big budget and when I become a successful producer and I have big resources and I can make big budget stuff, then it will be great, and you know, it'll be so liberating. I can do anything I want. And that was a great lesson in actually, you know what, I don't think I do want that. And I've never personally I've worked for a studio for a little while. I found it kind of boring. I'd love to work on a big high budget film. I'd love to do a studio picture at some point. I think that would be really great. But it would have to be the right project. It would have to be about finding the right idea and the right setup that justified it. And so I would just say that, you know, I think in the independent sector, I especially see it with first-time filmmakers and new talent, that often the reason they can't do something is money. I can't do that because I haven't got enough money. Nowadays, as you're doing here, you don't need it. And, you know, it's not an excuse. There's something else stopping you. Don't let money be the reason. You can make films that look amazing and are very highly professional and polished for small budgets nowadays. So, yeah, it's really learning that actually limitations are good. The dogma movement was all about rules and then about breaking them. And there's been a number of movements like that are, you know, very creative and artistically inspiring. And so I would say look at the limits and see them as positives, because often you'll come up with better solutions and be more inspired. Sun Tzu, The Art of War, a great book that used to always be on in the 80s. The Hollywood power agents would all have The Art of War, which is you know, how to win in battle. They would all have that book on their desks, and that's very often how it is when dealing with that kind of system. It's who's going to win the war. Is it going to be the artist or is it going to be the studio? And so I choose this in that context. The clever, combatant, i.e. fighter, imposes his will on the enemy, but does not allow the enemy's will to be imposed on him. So really, my interpretation, the reason I use that is because I think it's very important that everyone knows what their role is from the beginning and the rules. So as the producer, you really need to be very clear with the director and writer and any other producers and with the financiers what everyone's roles are. Like things like notes. I don't allow anyone to give notes to directors and writers personally and directly, because especially new talent, you can get notes from 20 people and they have no idea who to listen to. Half of them will be awful and idiotic and shouldn't be listened to. And so from my role as a producer, I see that I'm the filter and kind of share things. I want to be the person who, because it's very hard to be under fire like that as the writer and director. And you know, you just sometimes just don't, you can lose your story, you can lose the film that way by just having too many opinions, thinking you've got to listen to the money people too much. And so I would always say that it's really important that you collaborate and you listen, and a lot of it is just being clever and just saying, that's a fabulous idea, we're going to go and try it, and then you go and do, and you never do any of the sort. And then you come back and say, you know, we really did try it, but it just really didn't work. And, you know, you're just collaborative, and sometimes that idea might be great. But everyone really needs to be on the same side, but everybody needs to know what the rules of engagement are. And so it's not done enough. I think it's very important that the writer, director, producer particularly tell everyone how they like to work and why, and engage with everyone in that, rather than just expecting everybody to know, because everybody's different. And it's really important that you know what the boundaries are as well, what someone doesn't want and won't want to hear or do. And it's really, and equally you need to listen to heads of department. How do they like to work? Listen to them, especially some of the best script notes you get are from people who are the inspiring artists who are actually on the ground having to make things work for you and have great ideas or practical issues, which is, you know, we can't make that work like that, but I can do this, and listen to them instead of going, I don't care, just do it. Because that's not a collaboration. That's being a dictator. And I don't think that really does anyone any good in the end of it. But if all of that fails, then you practice the art of war. And then it does become a battle. Ideally not, though, because it's not pleasant and I wouldn't recommend it. It's exhausting, and yeah, as much as possible, you know, it's the producer's job, I think, hugely to make peace and to make, because films can be very difficult. People can get very passionate, they can get very upset, they can get very angry, egos run wild, and a lot of the time an artistic battle can really get lost in a play of who wants to be more important. And actually a film can suffer because of that, because actually really it just becomes about power, and it doesn't help the film at all. And everything needs to come back to the film and to the idea. Nothing else matters. Everything else is irrelevant. No is a very good word to learn hearing a lot. It's hard to, as I've said here, in most areas of life, no is the response that you'll hear a lot. And it's hard often to, no, we don't like that idea, no, we don't like the script, no, we don't want to make it, or we like it, but we're not sure, you come back. You know, it can be very hard, but often you really, A, have to get used to hearing it, and B, you can learn the maximum from it. Very often a film not getting made is, and the reasons that people give you, sometimes they're not the real reason that the film's not working or hasn't been made yet, but they may be a clue. And it's a really, really good thing to listen to criticism. It's very hard, but it's very useful. And you have to, the reason why I don't like getting notes from financiers and from other people and allowing directors and writers to have them directly is that very often the criticism, it can be criticism that's not helpful, and ego can be getting in the way. But comments and a real audience response can be very useful to listen to, even though often the things that you really get angry about are usually the best points. And the reason you're getting angry, especially in an edit or at script stage, is because there's a value in that point. And it's not something you want to hear, and you might not want to listen to it, but there's value in it. If you're getting annoyed about it, it's because in some way, usually you know they're probably right in some way. They may not have given you the real solution, but they've pushed a button. And sometimes that's really important to listen to. And if you read many great artists and filmmakers' interviews or books, that's something that comes up quite regularly, that that very often that the best comments are the ones that are hardest to hear.
I got a question for you. Do you have any method, like, you know, salespeople, they have trainings on how to handle objections, on how to handle the no, which are like the most common quote is, let's say that the first objection, like, I'm just looking. Like, you go into a shop, you are picking the clothes, and the shop assistant comes and asks you, do you need some help? The first reaction is always no. So it is so common, this first step. Do you have any methods you'd like to recommend to the filmmakers in this?
There's not really any particular tips. No, I don't think there's any real method. It's just be brave and go out there and and just don't be put off by no. That's the big thing. Just even if, because you'll eventually find someone who says yes or maybe, and you just have to keep going and keep going. And each time it will be easier and easier. And sometimes the best times you hear no all the time, there may be a reason. That project, that idea may just not really work, and it takes you a year to realise it, but you eventually do. And that's better than making it and then realising it's terrible. And so, yeah, it's just put yourself out there as much as possible and embrace, you know, pitching and, you know, sending your work out as much as possible. And yeah, but there's not an easy way to just expect everybody to say no. That's what I would say. Just expect that everyone's going to hate everything, and you're never going to get anywhere. And then if you have that attitude, then something, but you know, really you'll know that really you'll succeed. Your will grow stronger, and it really is. You know, the people that I see struggling the most are the ones who are so unrealistic and have kind of, and get put off by just a few no's and just stop. You know, people do that all the time, where you just think, wow, that didn't take much. You know, if you really, really wanted to do something, you don't wait for other people's permission to do it. Just go off and do it anyway. And so I would say that there's a lot that you can learn, yeah, from that very difficult two-letter word. Nurturing is an important thing to do as a team, but also, you know, for someone like me as a creative producer of new talent, to also instill, like what I'm saying about how I fell out with someone I won an Oscar with. You know, I would really like to not see other people do the same thing. And so that's something that I sort of try and work on as much as possible with others. Like, you know, I know you've fallen out now, and, you know, but really kind of get through it and work on this, because it's not worth it. You know, if you've made something good, it's kind of a tragedy to have not followed through with it. It's kind of mad to sort of break up when you've kind of achieved something really great and made something really good. But it happens a lot, and it's just kind of sad, really. Shifty, the second film we made for Microwave, is a great example of successful collaboration. These guys made music videos and ads together. They set up a company together. They made, the two producers and the writer-director are very close as a team. They really adore each other. It shows, so it's very compelling to meet them. When they pitch, it was just immediately the project stood out, because you could just feel the energy. They were dynamic, and they really, really have gone on to have these major careers. I mean, £5 million follow-up to Shifty, Ridley Scott helping them make their next movie. You know, that is a lot to do with the fact that the team are so compelling and dynamic and loyal, very, very loyal to each other. I find people like, or books like Louis Buñuel's My Last Sigh, and sorry, I don't have any new references because I just love old cinema. So that's my period, 40s and 50s cinema. So a lot of the books and the things that I love, and also 70s, Walter Murch, In the Blink of an Eye, like some of these writings and the wisdom shared by some of these great filmmakers are really amazing. And a lot of it, technology doesn't change a lot of what the kind of true tenets of filmmaking. You know, technological advancements are amazing, but a lot of what they talk about, and I think what I'm talking about now, are, you know, universal. So I think it's really important to kind of seek out your heroes, find how they work, and, you know, we've had more than 100 years of cinema, and so there are ways of doing things that are, you know, have been developed for a reason, and then there are technological advances that change things entirely and refresh and renew, and it's important to find a balance of the two. This is talking more as a writer, a director, and a producer, I guess, that often once you're up and running, you can find that you have too many projects, and it's good to don't have just one, because that's unhealthy, but don't have too many. Just have a few, spread your risk. There's always a point when you know that you need to focus, and when it's getting closer to making that film, then obviously you should only be focusing on one project. You can't make 2 feature films at the same time. It's very hard. But I think when you're developing, it's very healthy to have several ideas, and they can all inform on each other and have different ideas. And, you know, as a producer, have very different types of directors and writers and stories that you're interested in. Have a healthy balance. Collaboration, as I said earlier, really, this is sort of summarising earlier points. It's so important. I see the producer's role is often like a boxing trainer or a kind of sports coach, that what I do at Microwave is spotting people who I think can be world champion. And sometimes I might have only seen one tiny little bit of work, like Ill Manners, Ben Drew, Plan B, who made that. He had only done one music video. He'd not directed anything other than one music video. But it was so good, you could just, and then you met him and just thought, my God, this guy's really, really got something special. And the Shifty guys were the same. He had not made any narrative work whatsoever. He'd done some music videos and some ads, but he wrote that script based on someone he knew, and it was very compelling, and it had a real authenticity to it. So the nice thing about Microwave is we can take those risks, and that's informed on my other work too, that risks are, you know, informed risks is a really interesting, great space to be in, especially as a producer. No one film, this is something as a producer that's very difficult sometimes, especially terrible in Europe. The idea of the auteur has been good in some ways and very damaging in others, in that just too much focus goes on a writer-director usually, and that you have to have a spokesperson for the work, but also it really is a team effort, and sometimes other people who have been very important can be put in the shadow because of this auteur idea. Like festivals, the amount of times I've literally been pushed out of the way in people's rush to find the director. And very often it could be something that, this happened on Tsotsi. On that film, the director, Gavin Hood, got a huge amount of attention and offers after that movie, but he was hired to do that. The producer had found that material, developed the script. It was actually really, it was a producer-led movie and a director for hire. But because of the way the film industry thinks, particularly since the 60s and the whole concept of auteur being developed then, all the attention and credit went to the director, which is actually really kind of not the full story and the full picture. And so I think that's something that's really important to do more justice to lots of other departments and lots of other people's contribution, and that, you know, it's teamwork and there's power in a team, especially now. Yeah, this is my final tip, I think. Oh no, sorry, got 2 more. Knowing when to step back. Sometimes one project needs more focus than another. Sometimes you have to choose the right time to say, this is just not working, or this collaboration is not working, and that is really hard. Breakups are really difficult. I've had to take a director off of a project because I couldn't raise the money, and no one would ever tell me why. And, you know, the script was getting good feedback, but for some reason we just never quite getting there. And then I just said to a couple of the financiers who said that they really liked the script, but weren't really giving us reasons for passing, is it the director? And eventually they admitted, yeah, we're just not really convinced. And so I had to take that director off that project, because otherwise the project just wouldn't have happened. And it was really hard, but we managed it, and we're still friends, and we've since collaborated on something else, but it was really hard. But it was really important to me to not hurt his feelings, but to be realistic about it. And, you know, that's a very important thing that one learns as you go through your career. And sometimes a break from something, sometimes the best development work is to put something on a shelf and come back to it and then go, wow, I can't believe that we didn't spot why that didn't work. But sometimes you'll just get too in the middle of things and you can't. And edit is, again, especially documentaries. This is where I learned breaking in an edit is something I learned more from docs than fiction, which is sometimes you can't find the film and you just have to go away and come back and you have totally fresh eyes, and then it's great. It's a really good thing to break the edit up and to just give yourself as much time as possible to finish the film. Never rush that bit, ever. It's absolutely vital. People rush that bit way too much. Everyone's desperate to finish the film and plough through, and it's the worst thing you can do, usually. You really should just put it down, go away, come back. Yeah, similar theme. Sometimes creative partnerships just dry up. Things change. Sometimes it's just really good. Don't be rash, but face up to it quickly. And, you know, just as a producer, it's really important to be honest. I think sometimes, you know what, this is just not working out. You know, you can do all the things that you would do if you're dating. It's not me, it's you, it's not you, it's me. All of those usual things that one would say. You know, just be honest. Like I just see people stringing things along far too much, and it's just not fair on anyone. But sometimes it just takes a while to find a project, and so don't be rash. And this is a great Germaine Greer quote to summarise my whole, or my advice, which is, if you aren't confused, you haven't even begun to understand. So I don't think she was talking about the film industry when she was talking about confusion. I think she was talking about life, but that actually not having the answers to everything is a perfectly okay place to be. And so the last, oh no, I keep thinking this is last, I'm sorry. Set your ambitions to very high. Again, yeah, don't compromise on ideas. Consider every choice. And finally, but most importantly, don't forget the audience. There's a great quote I stole from somewhere, but unfortunately I can't remember where I read this, but that if you have no audience, all you've made is a series of lights flashing in the dark. It's not even a film. I think that's a really amazing statement, that it's not really a movie until there's an audience for it. And obviously they're talking about the old school cinema experience, which you know, many people predicted would die off, and oh my God, you know, cinemas feared video on demand and, you know, technological advances, and, you know, it's not dying off at all. I mean, cinema is alive and well, but there just have to be new ways of appreciating films. Independent films don't necessarily all have to go into cinemas. There's lots of different ways to get the movie out there. There's lots of different methods of distribution. There's lots of different ways of finding the audience now, and that's really exciting. That means you're not beholden to the big companies. Or a lot of these things are dying out. You know, these kind of big multinational companies, they're going to have to change, because there's a lot of new people coming through that are doing things differently, and the audience are there in their numbers. Film is will ever go out of fashion. People always want a great story. And so, but don't forget them. You know, be aware. You know, that's a very, very important thing in the edit process. Every film we work on at Microwave, every film I'd ever done, always have test screenings. Just not, you know, big official ones that you spend millions on for in the studio model, but you know, a mix of friends and get friends to bring friends, people you don't know, people are going to be honest, writer, director should sit there, listen, editor, obviously, you know, key members of the filmmaking team, sit at the back, listen. And often you can just feel it. You'll know where something's not working because you can just feel people shifting around and you just think, oh my God, I can't believe I held on to that scene. It just doesn't work. And in the edit suite, you can't tell that. You can tell it when you actually show it. So I would say do that as much as possible because that doesn't really cost much money and people are happy to do it. You know, the nice thing is film is sexy. So, you know, people always are drawn to it. And, you know, if you say you're a filmmaker, people are very happy to kind of come along, especially if they feel important that they're being asked for their opinion. But equally, yeah, you need to learn how to filter out some of the bad feedback or the not very useful feedback, but still listen to it. And it will always help. And yeah, final thing is Somerset Maugham, a great British writer, said there are 3 rules to writing a great novel. Unfortunately, no one knows what they are. And I think that's very true of film. God knows really why things work. You can kind of have some, with experience comes some idea, and certainly you can avoid pitfalls, but sometimes there's magic and sometimes not. And so I would just say embrace that as well, that there's just a sort of sense of serendipity to it often. So that's it, I think. I'm going to hand over to, well, any questions first? No? Yes.
It's working?
Yep.
I was just wondering what's the legal aspect of distributing films? How do you organise the contracts?
Well, usually a distributor or a VOD platform or whatever rights you're exploiting, they'll have their own contract. And so usually what they will just sign up a license. You never sell a film outright for a territory. You will always just license. The rights should always invest with the filmmaker and financiers jointly. Usually that's the ideal. And so you just license the right in that territory for a certain amount of time. On the whole, if you're selling all rights like cinema, DVD, VOD, every platform known to man, then the license will usually be about 10 to 12 years. America always want way longer, so you usually have to sign up 15, 20 sometimes. So yeah, they'll always have their standard contracts. If you've got a sales agent, the great part of what sales agents do is doing that for you. So that's how they earn their 15% fee from selling the movie as many territories as possible. They do that paperwork and they protect you, the filmmaker and the financier. Any more questions?
Any questions?
Well, about the process of making a movie, how do you get out of the situation when sometimes it happens that there's a moment, if we're talking about the organic aspect of the film crew, when everybody is doing their job, but only few are actually making the movie, and then everything reflects back to the camera. That's my observation. And sometimes you see that there's some weakest link, something you need to fix during the process to save it, and how to deal with that kind of situations. Because like I try to work, and probably you have like similar aspect to do as much as I can in the pre-production to get everything ready. But when these situations happen, how do you deal with them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely on a feature film, you just can't afford that to happen. So as much as possible, it is about having conversations beforehand to try and weed out the people who are just not there for the right reasons, don't really care, don't really like it. You know, you can usually figure that out beforehand and get most of that either ironed out, or you just change them. You get rid of them and you put someone else in. And because very often people will, if you just say you're not really into this, are you, or you're distracted, or something will be going on in their life, some reason they're distracted. You give them the benefit of the doubt, but at least give them a chance to talk about it. And sometimes that can fix it, other times not. So in which case you just have to go, you know what, this is just not personal, but this is just, this is not going to work. I had to do that actually on a film not long ago with an actress who was playing a major part in Borrowed Time. And she was just, I just knew this was going to be a disaster because she was distracted, stuff was going on in her life. She just was sort of there, but not there in rehearsal. She's a brilliant actress, but stuff was just going on in her life that was just, she was not really there, and the director was kind of struggling and thinking, God, she's a big name, she's more powerful than I am. Oh, she'll be fine, I'm sure. And, we had to have a really honest conversation and she was relieved, actually. She just said, yeah, you know what, I could really do some time off. And it was great. And thank God, because we do rehearsals and workshopping, you could figure that out beforehand. So as much as possible, insist on meetings and, prep. It's all about prep and weeding those things out. If not, and it's happening, whilst you're in motion and in production, you have to have a really honest, frank chat. But it can't be kind of you're being useless. It can't be attacking. Everyone's got to be really kind of feel held and okay to be honest about why. And sometimes it very often is like, I'm just not really into this actually, or yeah, I'm distracted. And it's a relief sometimes. But you have to weed it out quickly. It's hard though. It's really hard. It just has to not be personal. It can't be like, I don't like the way you're doing that. It just can be, look, this is just not working and I'm going to show you why. If you don't know, this is just not working for us. So let's just figure this out. But just not, don't do it in an attacking way. But it's tricky. And I think a lot of that is the producer's job. It really is. But it can be helped by kind of the director, as a team, deal with it as a team. But not so that the person feels bullied. Yeah, just that. There's no place for that. But it's tricky. It's really tricky. Yep. No, it's off. Is that on? Yep.
I want to go back to the issue about the agreement with the filmmaker and the producer, because here in Poland we got a situation like this. When the director writes a screenplay, the producer, there's first step is to write the agreement with this filmmaker about the screenplay, and the producer buys this screenplay for money and get all rights to the screenplay. And there is this in this agreement is a point that the author of the screenplay will direct the film. But the agreement with the director is set when the producer have the money for the film. So later, this is there is not the agreement with screenwriter and the director in whole one point. There's another agreement when the money is for the film is done. So how you solving this in your producing line?
The problem is they're different services.
Because there's a problem that the director in this way can take the film when he decides to this. Because in all this agreement, when you sign this agreement, is like a producer have all rights to the scenario, and when he thinks it's the best, he can pull out the director from the film. He has a right to do this, And there's a point in the agreements that you sign with the directors who making the movie based on their own scenario too. There are points like this in this agreement in your situation?
Well, there's probably different aspects of law between Poland and the UK. But in the UK, you can't actually, you option a work, you can't own it. I mean, studios own things, but I mean, there are in many countries, especially France is very good on this, where if you're an artist, you basically can't actually, no one can really own that other than you. So generally, it's an option agreement that the producer has. So they have an option to produce that screenplay based on that work, and there are usually clauses that may be specific about that person directing, etc. But you can't have a writer and director agreement because they're different departments and it's different rights. It's director providing a service. So really, if you're a writer who want to direct that work, that has to be part of the agreement. The agreement has to be amended, and that clause is there. So it just means that, just don't do that kind of deal. Every deal is negotiable. Even if someone says, this is our standard deal and this is how it works, you can just say, well, I'm not going to work like that. So if you want to make this has to be how I work. And then there are things like, if then this situation happens where a new writer or a director does a pass at a script, and therefore you have to be open to shared credits, etc. That all has to be agreed up front, really. And the producer should be, you should be dealing with proper producers who understand that and want to be fair. And
but without the rights to the scenario, the guy who wrote this can sell the scenario when he decides to when he find a bigger producer on the bigger money. During when you gathering the money, he can change you for another producer if you don't have his the deal with him. So it's a problem for producers when they don't have a rights for the scenario. I think
no, but that's why you have an option. You have an option and it's exclusive, and the option is so if you're a producer, equally it's good for writer and producer. It protects both. It means you have an exclusive option to make that film. It lasts for a year, 2 years. You can keep renewing it. And then that gives you a finite amount of time to have made the film or not. If the writer feels that you should have made the film by now and you haven't, then they have the right not to renew. If the producer feels for whatever reason like it's not working, then at the end of that, when that option has expired, then you basically can renegotiate, or you can say, I need a new writer now, and then that's the point at which you negotiate. So that's why options are a really good document and agreement, because it lays out the potential scenarios that before you get to needing the writer's agreement and the director's agreement. Options are that's the point. It's a flexible agreement that takes on board this slightly tricky period.
It is a topic for another conference, I guess. Thank you very much, Mia. Thank you for your time.
Sure.
And,
I'll be around, so if there's more questions, I'll be here.
And I'd like to sum up, because it's still in my mind from the very beginning of my working profession. And my favorite quotation is, preparation with opportunity generates what people call luck.
Yes.
Really lucky to have you here, Mia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.